Got it, girlfriend. Now we can roll.
All right. This is going to be an A+ tier 1 episode starting.
We are all
now.
Yeah, we straight chillin', serial killing, pre-cold villains on the mic, got you reeling. 5-star rated from the floor to the ceiling. If you catch a 1-star, no time for feelings. Got a demon DJ on the 1s and 2s by the name Beelzebub, so don't get confused. So grab a seat by the fire, roast them all over two, and prepare to hear the legend of the straight chillin' crew.
What up, nerds, and welcome to another eye-slamming episode of Straight Chilling, the weekly horror movie review show where you chill and we kill, slice, dice, and chop up yet another horror movie. My name's Bob. I'll be your host for the evening. This is episode number 371, recorded Tuesday, May 17th, 2022. Tonight, we're talking about a new movie that just hit Shudder. It is called The Sadness. Before we get into it, let me introduce everyone else on the show. First up, calling in from Washington, D.C., we got our boy Randu. What's up?
What's up, Bob? I'm good, but I hear you're feeling quite ill today.
Yeah, I came down with the sadness. So.
Sweet.
Your mother, get up. Come on, get down with the sadness. That's what all the kids are
Dude,
saying.
you have gotten really down with the sadness.
Down with the sadness. You fuck, I'll get top. Last but not least, calling in from South Korea, we got our boy, Sad Stains. What's up?
The following intro contains material that may be harmful or traumatizing to some audiences. Stains.
I think it's safe to say we're firing on all cylinders.
Oh
start.
yeah.
That's
Oh
sad.
yeah. This is gonna be top tier episode right here.
Oh yeah.
We're all so sad. We're just sad.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
We're sad and yet
Oh.
we're smiling. Metaphor at play.
Sad boy Stains over here. Let's go.
Listening to that mumble hop, whatever those kids
know.
call it.
What?
You know
Bob-
what I'm talking
Bob
about.
Bumble hop, you know.
Bob is 69 years old.
Oh shit.
What do these kids call sock hops these days? Mumble hops. Bob, you texted me something the other day that your mom said to you that was just a classic,
Yeah.
classic your mom thing.
The Firestarter remake came out, and there's a trailer for it that came on, and she was like trying to remember what it was called, and she's like, "Are you guys gonna be watching The Girl Who Makes Fire?" And I was
A
like,
girl who makes.
"That's too
No, we're busy with chimpanzee outer space.
good."
Oh my god.
My mother is a saint. Let's tackle some housekeeping real quick. Here's another reminder. We got our June poll pick currently posted on our Patreon website. If you support us at the $5 level or above, you get the chance to vote on a movie we're talking about this June. June is Randy's takeover. What's happening, Randu?
Oh God, let me get my brain in order here.
Oh,
we're doing
God.
some.
Oh God.
We're doing some made-for-TV horror. Made-for-TV horror is the theme I've chosen, and I've chosen the films Threads from BBC, Duel, and the first Spielberg film, and help me out here, man. My brain's dead. What is the third?
Threads. Do we say that one?
I
said
the
that
Bear Winch Project.
Yeah, the
third
Bear
option.
Winch, the pornographic
TV.
made-for-TV film.
Made for Skinamax.
Softcore television. It's Body Bags.
Body bags. Thank you. My God. Yeah. So those are going. I don't know where the numbers lie, though, Bob. You got any answers for that? Can you answer for that?
Threads is in first place by a single vote. The Bear Winch Project is in second place, and Duel's way on back.
Come on, Bear
Body
Winch
Bag
Project.
He's coming from behind.
Fingers crossed. Randy
Wow.
owes me after this episode.
I owe you? No.
With the Bear Winch Project.
Yeah. Okay. Well, enjoy your free time jerking it. That has nothing to do with me and never will. Stop asking.
Just jacking it.
It's a real spooky stroke.
I be stroking.
We know. We know.
Get your votes in before the end of May. We'll see what we're talking about in June. We did drop a brand new mini cast over on our Patreon website. Last Friday was the Friday the 13th. So Juice and I were talking about the entire Friday the 13th franchise. Slam that into your ear holes on our Patreon website or on your podcatcher of choice.
Yeah. The whole franchise, 12 films of Friday the 13th. Perfect time for summer horror.
Hopefully all you kids had premarital sex in the woods last Friday. Smoked drugs, all that stuff.
Bob is advocating for teenage infidelities right now. You sicken many ways,
say
really.
Teenage, you did.
You said kids, actually, is what you said.
You said
Bob.
kids. I actually did you a step better. But,
yeah, we're helping you out.
We're gonna get arrested.
I call
Whoa,
everybody
Bob
a kid.
is
Whoa.
yeah, because he's 69 years old.
Yeah, everybody's younger than 69.
Everyone is younger than 60. That is a scientific fact. Don't try and look it up. Just trust us.
What else are we doing? That's
Dude,
that's
no.
all I got.
Okay,
What?
no.
Oh yeah.
You're,
So hang
more.
on. We were all.
This can't be the second week in a row where we missed
There's
this
more.
opportunity.
We were all guests recently on the latest Plug It Up episode.
It's
which
probably
is-
not the latest at this point. but-
Well, yeah, that's true. Where we were talking about The Omen, all three of us joined that episode and talked about the classic Omen, so not the remake. What year is that? 72 or something like that. The
69.
the OG
Oh my God.
Omen.
I think it's 74.
Is
It
it?
doesn't matter.
69 dudes.
Oh God. So yeah, definitely check that out. I thought it was a really fun episode. I had never seen The Omen before, so it was a first time watch for me, but just kind of covering one of those classics that we've never even covered here on the Straight Chillin' podcast. So it was definitely an interesting discussion. You should check that out anywhere you get your podcast. Plug it up.
Big thanks to Caitlin for inviting us on her show,
Yes.
Plug It Up. That was really, really cool, really enjoyable conversation. Make sure you check her show out anywhere you get your podcast.
Absolutely.
That's all I got. Gentlemen, anything else I've forgotten?
I'm gonna give a quick shouts outs, but it also is relevant to this cast coming soon. Our boy Corey recently released a new episode on his podcast, the Twinbee podcast, talking about BioShock. And the reason I bring it up is because it's a part one. Of at least part two. I don't know how far he's going to take it, but I joined him to discuss the part two version. But in order to kind of get ready for that, you should definitely listen to the part one version. So if you're interested in some BioShock, check that out. Me and Randy once tried to discuss the franchise and I fucked it up, unfortunately, with some technical issues. And so that is lost to time now. That was like 2 or 3 years ago when Randy played through the series. But yeah, but now Corey's discussing it and eventually I will be featured on there as well. So get ready for that. That is the Twinbee podcast. I believe that is all of our housekeeping.
A man chooses to listen to the Twinbee podcast.
Bob, you know, video games, right?
House is clean.
There's a whole Pac-Man.
His house is clean.
Hell yeah.
Dude,
They
that's
call
the
me Ralph
OG
Pac-Man.
That's the OG horror game with the ghosties and whatnot,
Oh,
right,
yeah.
Bob?
Blinky,
Miss-
the most terrifying ghost of them all.
Mr. Hungry. That's what I call him.
That is legitimately kind of fucking creepypasta-esque.
He can never be satiated. We're getting into the main event. We're talking about The Sadness. And we're kicking it off with the back of the box.
What's on the back of the box?
Oh boys.
Bob,
Brand
do you
new.
have this box?
Is it next to your Bear Winch project box?
My
Box
Bear Winch
set.
4K box set. Yeah, it's right next
Oh
to
yeah,
that.
Vinegar Syndrome.
Because it's all
coming.
porn, baby. No, I don't have this. You can buy it on 4K though; it does exist. Yeah, this movie came out 2021. It just hit Shudder 2022, so that's its official wide release as far as I'm aware. This was written and directed by Rob Jabaz, stars Barant Zhu, Regina Lee, Ying Ru Chen, and some other folks. Runtime of 1 hour and 39 minutes. Plot synopsis brought to you by IMDb is as follows. A young couple trying to reunite amid a city ravaged by a plague that turns its victims into deranged, bloodthirsty sadists. Gentlemen's brand new movie, first time watch. Would you recommend people check it out? Juice, why don't you kick us off?
Not particularly. This is not a family watch, as Bob tried over and over again to watch.
Was
with
that
his
legitimate?
family.
No, I was not seriously trying to show that to my
Okay.
whole family at the get together.
That's why.
Oh,
Y'all
yeah.
want some crawdads and sadness? I got both.
Wash it down with some sadness.
Party
No,
over.
the only like people I would recommend this if you are into like the horror genre, and sometimes we spiral off and like, oh, what's like some more extreme films I could kind of get into or things like that. I would maybe recommend that or the sadness in that kind of category if you're like really trying to push some like extreme views or something like that.
Views, well, extreme content, maybe.
Content, yeah. Extreme viewing content, yeah, I guess.
Earth is flat.
Watch the stat. I want that on a bumper sticker.
The earth is flat, watch the sadness. So yeah, that's the only kind of category I would recommend this for. Otherwise, not particularly. Randy, how about you? Would you recommend people check this out?
I think I pretty much fully agree with that. Yeah, this is as far as zombie movies go, like, and this movie is a zombie movie, if that's not clear. It is about as extreme as I've ever seen, and it's not extreme in all of the expected ways. I think that it's worthy of saying that if you have any sort of hangups about sexual content, this is not the movie for you. But if that is the particular boundary that you're interested in seeing, shame on you. But also, this movie could work for you.
No
how
kink
about
shame.
you? Would you recommend people check out The Sadness?
I recommend watching The Sadness if you're in the mood for like pure shock
romp?
value. Definitely not a light romp. A very, very heavy 20-ton romp if you're into that.
Like
Yeah,
nothing
this
I'd ever
is-
smelled before in my life.
This is just like full-blown exploitation. It's a shocker, if you will. So if you're looking for something that's gonna sort of make you clutch your pearls, I would say throw this one on. And I don't know, I could be wrong. I can't remember if we've ever covered a Taiwanese film before. This might be the first one we've done. So if you haven't seen much Taiwanese horror, you can, add that to the list of reasons to check this out, I suppose.
Make this the bar.
Yeah,
it's
I don't know
all-
if this is the
No.
one you should check out first.
It's all like this. Yeah, this is like
Taiwanese people might appreciate if you don't.
Welcome back to another box office.
Whoa.
Whoa,
That was weird. We're
We
up
have
to
this
Lana.
under control.
Randy's looking up reviews for the Amityville vibrator over there.
Oh.
Can't trust him.
Man, you really got these names at a arm's reach, right? there.
Yeah, don't
Randy's
ask why.
ordering his new Sea-Doo vibe.
Yeah, this is one for the gore hounds. I think that sounds sort of like a very qualified recommendation from the three of us. Let's drop that spoiler warning and get into the rest of the movie. Here we go.
Spoiler warning.
Yeah, I was just looking through like a list of the biggest Taiwanese horror films, and I don't think we've covered it for mini cast or main cast at all. So yeah, this might be the first one. Damn. Way to
Nice.
kick it off.
Mhm.
Yeah.
First
Bob.
impressions are everything, boys.
Bob, did you type up a plot synopsis, and are you going to read it, and are you going to be on some list afterwards?
Yes, and most definitely.
Okay.
Put me on your watch list, everybody.
Let's hear all about the sadness.
All right. Our main characters, Jim and Kat, they're a young Taiwanese couple. They wake up and start the day off as they normally would. Jim gives Kat a ride to the subway on his little scooter. On the way home, he stops for some coffee when an older, sickly woman spits in the face of another patron, infecting him with what we later find out is called the Alvin virus, causing him to murder several other patrons. Jim is terrified and is chased home. While he's there, he texts his girlfriend about what's happening, says to stay put, and he's going to come get her. He's then attacked by his neighbor. We cut to Kat riding on the subway as an older gentleman is hitting on her. She asks him to stop. Right as more people are getting on the train, one of them is infected and starts stabbing people. It escalates, causing several other people to become infected, including the old man, who then pokes a girl named Molly's eye out with his umbrella. Kat and Molly narrowly escape the old man. They make it to the hospital, where Kat borrows a security guard's phone and calls Jim, telling him where she is. We then see the Chinese president addressing the nation on TV, and his general shoves a grenade in his mouth. And his head explodes. What?
Taiwanese.
Yeah, I don't think that was the Chinese president.
It says Republic of China on the TV.
Does it?
Is why,
oh, really?
Why
Okay.
Yeah.
My bad.
I'm ignorant.
The old man then gets to the hospital and things escalate again, resulting in a literal blood orgy. Kat blinds the old man with a fire extinguisher and then bashes his head in. A scientist opens a reinforced door and invites Kat in for shelter. He makes her handcuff herself to the shower, strip naked, showers her in a disinfectant. Kat ends up discovering an infected baby in the trash, and the scientist explains he injected 8 babies with the Alvin virus to see if any of them were immune. They all were infected, and he killed them. He rationalizes his decision by saying they would have died anyways. Kat and the scientist try to sneak up to the roof and get on a helicopter when Jim shows up fully infected and kills the scientist. Kat escapes Jim and asks him what it feels like to be infected. He says he feels like he finally has a purpose in life, which is to dismember and mutilate Kat. She finally reaches the rooftop of the hospital to get on the helicopter. As the door closes behind her, we hear several gunshots, assuming she has now been killed. Roll credits.
Yay.
Let me go ahead and say we are not giving half star for Yabos this week. I know everyone was waiting to find out.
All those principles out the window.
Well, I'm still sticking to my code. But yeah, this movie, I will say, to start this off, I will say about the first 20 to 30 minutes of this movie, I was like, okay, this might be really interesting. This might be really, or could be really good, because I thought they set up some really great pieces. Where it really lost me was the subway scene.
Why is that?
Well, okay, so to set it up, what I thought was strong about this setup and why I was intrigued at first is I thought the couple had a really great, just basic kind of chemistry. So I was like, okay, I'm interested to kind of follow this guy around and stuff like that. And then once stuff starts popping off, like introducing it with the crazy grandma at the restaurant and kicking it off that way, that was intense. And that visual, even because he had seen her standing on the rooftop earlier and her kind of coming back around, the visuals they give her, and then obviously they kick it like straight off with the like crazy brutality, how fast it spreads and stuff like that. I was like, okay, so there was some real tension. His neighbor comes in. They show you a little bit of the body gore too, with the melting face, the cut off of the fingers and stuff. The thing that really was like, okay, this movie really might kind of capture this like really intense horror, was for me was the laughing over the speakers when that dude comes on and was like, everybody, he's trying to convince people to come down to the center like he's gonna help them, but then he can't help himself by saying like, I'm gonna cut you to pieces and feed the dog, and just starts laughing on the screen. I was like, holy God,
he's gonna cut your dicks off and feed them to the dogs.
Yeah. And then they were saying, and then like just going constantly over the speakers. I was like, this is intense, because it had this level of kind of like real lifeness, you know, like this kind of ground level stuff going over the speakers. Even though we'd seen some extreme gore already, I was just like, this is, intense in a very scary kind of way of just immediately society falling apart. But then when it turned to the subway and like just it became this huge bloodbath, and then they turned to like the sexual stuff, I was like, ah, man, like,
See,
I don't know. That's where it lost me.
it didn't lose me quite at that point. Here, I fully agree with a lot of what you just said, though, because this movie starts out with like some pretty competent building blocks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you said, like the couple are sort of a believable couple. They're having a little tiff, but they're still, you know, young lovers and all this stuff. They, I don't know. There's something sort of like pretty slice of life about the first part of the movie before things really pop off.
Yeah.
And it moves at a slower pace that I kind of like recognized having seen the trailer. I was like, okay, well, this is a really nice counterweight to what I expect to come later, which is going to be like, you know, high impact, fast zombie action.
Yeah.
I didn't think it would be as brutal as it was, though. The first kill that you're talking about, the old woman, she pours hot grease on the guy behind the counter and his face starts melting off. It is extremely good and effective gore.
It is.
And I was like, yes, I am set in for this.
That scene happens at the 14-minute mark. So this movie like sets the stage and then is like, you know, hits, you know, goes pedal to the metal and you get melting flesh, and then a lady jumps off a roof and people are getting hit by cars and shit. So I like, from the you know, French fry basket to the face, I kind of knew what to expect. So when the subway thing kicked off, I wasn't really taken off guard by that. I didn't mind it.
I was taken off guard by the sexual aspect of this movie. That I didn't remember from the trailer, or just didn't know. I don't know if they covered it in the trailer or if it was hinted at all. But you know, I thought that that scene was pretty effective. It just was very like Train to Busan, but maybe a little bit more like of a grounded in terms of the way the normal people were acting. I really liked the way that Kat got attached to Molly and was trying to protect Molly. I like that. There was I like the businessman in that scene, who the way that he was talking to her and just being like, you know,
set up,
not to ride the coattails of last week, but there were some incel vibes going there, and
always are.
Oh, there always are. But what I didn't like, the sexual stuff gets to me more. I mean, I think that we all are kind of in that camp where it's a little bit beyond what we're comfortable with, and it feels way more exploitative than the violence to me. Chalk that up to whatever you want, but to me, it was like, you know, it didn't quite get so bad that I thought, you know, just the idea that was part of the threat was that people were like not just fast zombies, fast brainless monsters that want to kill you and rip you apart. They were fast zombies with relatively full faculties and the ability to make quips and jokes and be creative. And the thing they wanted to mostly create was pain, suffering, and sexual torture. And that was really like a fucked up idea. And they could have, like, to me, like, if they had towed that line a little bit closer without going full bore, I would have been like maybe a little more ingratiated to this movie throughout.
So I would like to clarify kind of where my turning point was a little bit, because I kind of just said, oh, the subway vibe and where they turned to the kind of sexual aspect. It was that, but I thought they did set up the businessman well. But where it was two things that kind of paired together where I was like, oh, this is kind of like a tone shift for me in like writing standards, where by the end of the subway, we do get introduced to the sexual aspect mostly in that kind of area, which is when we kind of transfer to Molly's, Molly, but Kat's perspective. But it really kind of was the introduction of Molly too. So I did like, you know, how Kat was kind of looking out for her and they formed that bond ultimately. But just kind of making her, like, I knew that it wasn't going to be just the sexual exploitation, but kind of paired with Molly's introduction of, oh, she's like the ugly, undesirable one. Then she's the one who like gets her eye poked out. And she's kind of like the burden. It seemed the pairing of her introduction and her exploitation paired with the introduction of the sexual exploitation seemed to just really take a dip in like my expectations for like the writing. And I was like, damn, like that's kind of a bummer. It just kind of became like a bummer for me, those two pairings.
The Molly aspect, I mean, to some extent, yeah, I mean, later on, certainly, but her introduction, just the idea that some like Kat was not going to like let this person fall behind. I respected that, what I mean?
Sure,
As a character, that made me engaged with that character more.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that kind of I had a similar feeling, and the moment that feeling hit for me was when our businessman shows up at the hospital. The idea that he is a continual villain, I don't know. There's something about that he's like,
agree,
I don't know. I don't think that a zombie movie needs a particular strong zombie to be the particular big bad boss villain of the bunch. Like, they're a horde. That's what makes zombies terrifying. Not,
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I'm
this-
sure exceptions exist, but it didn't sit right with me.
I like that this movie sort of it is a zombie movie, but it sort of tackles zombies in its own way. It's like a virus that you get that sort of extrapolates like your the worst thoughts you can conjure, and it forces you to act upon them, in some cases against your will. And that's why some of these people are crying when they're performing these acts, and that's why it's called the sadness. I think that's a cool idea. And this like businessman mentions to Kat on the subway that he sees her like every day, and he's obviously been trying to work up the courage to talk to her, and he finally does, and she shuts him down pretty hard, and obviously he doesn't take it well, and then he turns immediately after that. So that's sort of like his driving force, and I kind of dig that, honestly. I like that better than just a zombie horde, a constant force of it, like a mindless zombie horde.
I don't know, man. To like just having him follow her around, like if I was down with it up until the point, like I was down with it up until he got locked into the subway, and he's like, "I'll see you later," and it's just very like weirdly mustache twirly all of a sudden, and it just felt like I don't know, like I think you could make that claim generally without having to have a single avatar for that exact person, for that exact kind of evil. Like that's kind of, if everybody's acting under the same uncontrollable violent impulses, then it doesn't have to be him the whole time. like I don't see any reason for it to be.
I agree. And one of the reasons I do is like when you take on Jim's perspective, the threat is like the world, like what am I'm just on the streets and I'm going through these situations, and sometimes it's like sexual based, like where he comes across those teenagers, they're torturing that one guy or whatever, but ultimately it's just the threat of getting hot grease poured on you, or like being eaten, or like anything. It's just the world around you. When it becomes a specific guy following this girl around, and it could reflect like real life and the fears that we experience in life, but it becomes like, I think why I was so disappointed is it becomes almost like solely sexual. Like this man is hunting you to rape you in terrible ways. And it's like, that is a weird outlier for a zombie film, I guess, in a way where it's like, I don't know. I agree with Randy that it took me out of the idea that like anything around the corner could get you. You don't know even what room is safe, what door are you going to open, or anything like that. And to have this guy being the driving factor, it just, for sexual purposes, felt like a completely different movie in a lot of ways.
It just felt cheaper to me. Like, yeah, go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry.
When we're following a dude around, like the granny calls him like a handsome boy, and there's a sequence where he sees somebody like raping someone on the sidewalk, and he drives off on his little scooter, and the dude chases after him with no pants on. There's like various rapings happening like on this, just around. So I mean, it's not just this one guy. That doesn't make it any more pleasant to watch, but it's like a theme for sure.
It doesn't. But for instance, like the one guy, like the first like kind of torture that he sees is like people holding down this one guy, like stepping on his leg or whatever. It's more varied than just like one person hunting you down to rape you. He sees a lot of different things, so I'm not saying like, oh, you can't like mix it in, or it can't be a factor, which I mean, it would be preferable if
just singling a single person out is just feels cheaper to me. But like, to argue against myself a little bit, in fairness, you could make the argument, I'm just thinking of this now, but that by putting all of that focus on like one guy's in particular grudge in his regular life that has turned violent in this other hellscape, I think that you could argue that is kind of I don't know, that's pointing to the sickness that exists already. Like, I don't think it necessarily has to be portrayed this way, but I could see somebody making a value judgment about, like, okay, here's a guy, you know, who's obviously he's harboring these things. That's what makes him extra dangerous once he turns, is because he's already teetering on this edge of sexual frustration and violence. So I don't know. I mean, and it's certain. I don't know. I don't want to really like. I don't want to give it that though, because it really does feel. It starts to feel very. It just feels cheaper. It feels cheaper. Like there's now a lead Urukai instead of just an army that's facing you down.
I do too. I kind of put one final point on it. It's just is because of the idea that Bob brought up. It's like people don't like the idea. Is like you are compelled to do these terrible things that a lot of people don't want to do, and that's why they're crying, and that's why this movie is called The Sadness. The guy describes it as like, imagine if you just told yourself not to blink, if blinking hurt people, but literally you couldn't stop your body from doing it. It's an impulse that your body has to, you cannot stop yourself from blinking, but every time you blinked, it like hurt people terribly. Okay, imagine that that's happened, but that takes all the compellingness away when this dude's just a huge piece of shit the whole time, you know. When he's that, it takes that interesting idea to say like, oh, these are just regular people. Like if it was somebody that loved her, or just like, you know, a dad turning, which is what on his kid, or something like that, then that's the compelling aspect, not this just huge piece of shit who's like stalking you around, who's kind of like a cooter anyways.
He's already there anyway.
I want to bring up another property that came out last year, but I would spoil the whole thing. There's a certain. Go ahead, Bob.
I just wanted to mention, speaking of there is a ton of rape in this movie. It is like, even though that is the case, there is some nudity, but there's not like as much nudity as you might assume given what this movie is about. So like, I'll give them some kudos for that. But there's just not like constant nudity on screen, where they really could have done that very easily, I think.
Yeah. I think that is like the only argument against this being just flat exploitation, honestly. And even though I do think it is, but I
think if that was the choice they made, I probably would be way more harder on this movie than I am. I do like this movie. This is totally personal, but like, you know, it's going to vary depending on who's watching the movie. But I think this movie, for me, for the most part, toes the line where like it did shock and disgust me, and it had me like, I was literally going like, oh my god, I can't believe you're doing that. But like, it didn't go so far to where I was like, fuck this movie, I don't ever want to see this again. And I think that's a difficult line to toe. And I think just in general, speaking on behalf of like, you know, the three of us and other horror fans who have just seen a ton of like fairly shocking movies, it's hard to like get that response from you know, someone like that. So I gotta give them props for doing that. It's not easy to do.
It's not easy. And you know, like this is an effective movie. Like I don't think anybody could argue. I don't know who would argue that it wasn't effective in terms of making your stomach turn, making it, you know, making you sit uncomfortably in your chair, making you say, oh my god. Like those are things that, you know, like you said, even seasoned veterans are going to have problems with. But you know, one thing, I don't know, I lost my train of thought on the other thing though, so it'll come back to me.
So I want to make one point to go off something that Bob said, kind of saying like, oh, you know, they didn't have to have as much, or I mean, they didn't include as much nudity as they could have and stuff like that. There's one point I want to mention to go against that, again, in the same way I mentioned, you know, they chose this guy and it made it weaker because it goes against the whole kind of thesis of the people crying and they don't want to do this and they're compelled to do this, is in the same way that guy is explaining, you know, he kind of does this info dump, which can be a little cheap, but it's helpful in some ways. But another thing that he mentions also is he's like, I think that's why they don't attack each other, because, you know, they really need to feel the pain. Like that's what they're really craving. They have to have the pain. Okay, that's fine, I guess. But then why do you have this central focusing scene where you have this giant blood orgy where they're all zombies at that point and they are all about it. That kind of inclusion just seems full exploitation to me, because you're not even sticking to your themes anymore. You're literally just doing to say, what shocking thing could we really make you go, oh my god, which really has nothing to do with the world building that you've created. So I think that's super cheap to do shit.
Also,
like that.
I could argue,
scientist could have no idea what he's talking about. On the flip
True,
side.
but they spend a lot of time with him. They invest a
He's the
lot in him
mouthpiece
for that
for
to be
the
the case.
thesis of the movie.
True.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I wanted to go to also going off of what Rob was saying about like the nudity, the amount of nudity that there is or whatever. I think I have this weird tug of war feeling about it, because on the one hand, I feel like, you've got in a straight regular like 70s exploitation movie version of this, it's all titties, it's all ass, it's all like, sexual exploits interspersed with some grounding, some elements that make it seem like it's a movie in some other right.
Yeah.
And they don't do that. They don't show a lot. But on the other hand, by doing that, it almost makes it feel more brutal by not by showing hints of things. There's something, I remember this so vividly. There's this documentary that came out when I was a kid about the history of comics and the Comic Authority Code or whatever. It came on AMC or something. And one thing that somebody was talking about skirting that line was like the Comics Authority Code, whatever it's called. In like one specific comic, the Punisher, it was supposed to be like he jumps in bed with his enemy and he jumps over and kisses his enemy or whatever, but they weren't supposed to show that in a kid's comic book. So instead they showed his pistol, his belt, his bandolier hanging over a chair. And they're like, but somehow that's more suggestive of something even more sexually explicit than actually showing what they were going to show.
Yeah.
So there's some element of that where it's like the Jaws thing. It's like Bruce the Jaws dummy. Like by not showing, it's almost more brutal somehow.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have this weird like tug of war between whether or not that was a responsible decision or a more shocking decision.
That's a good point.
It's not incel enough, says Randy. We need more TNA. Please.
Give me more TNA.
Taiwan. For the incels.
Oh,
Randy is speaking for the incels tonight.
I speak for the incels.
We got a representative here on Straight Chilling. We don't, to be clear.
No, we do not.
The practical effects are like really top notch in this movie. There's almost no CGI stuff. The blood is all practical. It's extremely impressive, I think. Like all the set pieces, the melting flesh, the dude scientist gets his foot chopped off and then it's puked on.
Oh yeah,
that's a Raimi moment.
Nasty. Ugh. They have
Really,
a couple like
really
Raimi moments like that, kind of like the grandma with their teeth looking all crazy.
Yeah.
And and that's why I was like so impressed. You're right, Bob. The graphics, the effects, the gore and stuff look really good, but also they look good in a kind of grounded, maybe a little over the top kind of way. And so when they were with this guy in the beginning, like those first 20 minutes, and even in the subway scene where they're kind of just like stabbing people, he gets a guy in the neck, it goes like all crazy, like that's okay, where it's going to the ceiling and you're like, oh my god, it's this like kind of like tight mix between grounded, realistic, but also a little over the top sometimes. But then, when they have, I don't know, something about like introducing Molly and her getting stabbed in the eye and then that being kind of like a set, I don't know. There is just like, it's like they crossed the line a little bit. It's like they were walking it so tight and then they just kind of, if they kept it to that line, I feel like this could have been a much better movie. And I'm just kind of like disappointed.
And in that vein, I kind of feel like we have to talk about the scene.
Sure.
You know the one.
You know what Mom always said, right? Holes is holes.
Oh God,
yep.
Bob.
That's what this guy's mom always told him. Yeah. So there's eye socket rape in this movie. That happens in this movie,
Dude.
and it's not shown explicitly on camera, but the after effects are, and
Ooh, yeah, that's
some
rough.
thrusting is
Mhm.
slightly off camera, but not entirely
And the
thrusting, and some
screams.
sounds and some screams.
Oof.
And it's like that's the moment that I think about that, and I'm like, it almost I almost think it feels like more horrible and more I almost feel it more because it's so suggested and not explicitly shown. It's explicit without being on screen. Do you know what I mean?
I agree too,
Yeah.
because they
The
just
imagination runs
they
wild
just
with what's
used
left to
Molly.
run wild with.
She wasn't a character. She was just a tool for depravity, and I think that's kind of my problem with her introduction as well.
I like, yeah, it's how she ends that bothers me personally.
Yeah, she's introduced and like, okay, yeah, it helps to build the character of Kat or whatever, and her standing up for her and helping her, imploring. But like Molly gets nothing to do as far as like any kind of relation or character or anything except to be shat upon. She's just used as a tool
Yeah.
to show how depraved this movie can be. And that was a part of my problem too, is like, okay, she even her introduction, before we get to all the crazy stuff, even her introduction of just like, okay, the good looking girl is going to go away now, and here's the the not good looking girl, and she's going to sit next to this guy, and his whole attitude's going to change. It's just used to help other characters either become better or worse. And I hate that.
She's a means to an end.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, I wanted to give it, I felt like they were trying to give it more credence than that when she was introduced. Like, I thought, like, the fact that, like, I don't know, the way that Kat interacts, I was really, like, happy with the way the character was, like, really trying to help this person and not abandoning her, even at her own peril. And that felt great. I understand why they wanted to include that, but they just clearly didn't know what else to do with her. So, like, well, how can we fuck this person up? Because we got to be fucking people up. People got to have red shirts. She just becomes like the ultimate red shirt that just gets like pays the ultimate price for
nothing.
What character development exists. And that's the thing is, you're right. Like, the character development that they build for Kat kind of just gets squandered, because in the end of the day, she just like kind of has to roll with the punches like everybody. And then she, at the end, it's implied, you guys tell me if you think this too, but at the end, I feel like it's implied that the virus takes over her in the last few seconds before she walks up those stairs.
Kat, I just assumed she walked out and they pulled a Night of the Living Dead and just shot, just opened fire.
That's why I'm like conflicted.
Yeah.
Okay, I could see it going both ways, because like there is a definite, to my mind, I think at least an intentionally ambiguous something of a smile that comes over her face as she turns away.
Okay, yeah. That could,
but
that could be because she was injected by the scientist and he waits,
right,
and she doesn't turn, but she could turn later.
Yeah, like again, like you were saying, like what does that scientist know to some extent? Like, he clearly, like, I don't know, he thought he made several fuck ups already at this point. So we're kind of, as much as we are depending on him for lore, I don't think that necessarily extends to like the titular character's final result.
It'd be even darker of an ending if like she is immune and is like the walking cure and they just kill her. Damning
I think
themselves.
so too. It's like the ultimate end of Night of the Living Dead moment. That would be true. And they kind of leave that to ambiguous enough to where you can imagine it, I guess. And let's, like, since we're talking about the end. Oh, go ahead.
There was one more thing I was going to say that bothers me. I think it might be where you're going to. There's something that like really I was like, oh, this movie, why is it doing this? Okay, so they set this up, and it bothered me when they kind of set it up too. I was like, this feels a little cheap, but like I'll roll with it because it's like somewhat relevant. Is the idea of like the Alvin virus and the attitude that people have, and where in the introduction they have the doctor, and he's like, people need to take this seriously. It's obviously this COVID play, COVID's just a cold, and people don't need to take it seriously. Oh, people need to listen to doctors, and he's saying, oh, it can mutate and stuff like that. And so when they even just that basic kind of connection, I was like, that's just a little too simple, basic. I don't like it, but like I'll roll with where they're gonna take it. So when they get to the aspect of like, the doctor was right, see, you need to take this sickness seriously because look how it could change. But then they introduce the doctor and he's like injecting babies.
Yeah,
and
he's
stuff
hand murdering babies.
Yeah, so it's like, see, you can't trust either side. You know, both
sides
are just complete. I was just like, what?
But even more than
know?
that, like at that point, it felt like they had even abandoned any commentary to me
I
on the
completely agree
coronavirus.
with that.
Yeah.
Felt like they did that to sort of like maybe ground you at the beginning, and then they just
Right.
let the fucking pot boil over, and just who gives a shit about that metaphor anymore? It's not about that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like they used it as a jumping off point that everybody would immediately connect to and be like, okay, I understand what they're doing here. And then they were just like, flip the gore switch, baby, which honestly I'm down with, because like we get it. The pandemic, we've lived it. I don't want to see a movie all about that shit. I really don't.
Or at least like, okay, you know, if you're gonna do it, then do it like that movie where they do the Zoom seance. You know, at least that's
cool,
creative. Don't just be like, oh, this Malvin virus and then mutates. You know, it's just
It'll
like,
make you fucking
come on, you're not even
honestly,
trying.
I agree that they're not trying with that, but to me, it's like, you know, I'm okay watching a movie that uses that giant, fucking internationally significant, horrifying event as its sort of, you know, as a jumping off point, or as having, but it just doesn't have anything interesting to say about it. It doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
It uses the trappings of a point without having one. It seems like, and if you're being generous, like Juice, I feel like you were being, by bringing it back to the doctor. The point appears to be, like you said, like a both sidesy, like, well, when the chips are down, you can't trust anybody, right? Like, and it's like, okay, well,
I mean,
thanks
the
for the
science
tip.
is willing
that
to
the sadness that you
kill
have to make this
babies to
movie?
cure your sickness.
Oh,
It's
God.
like,
Yeah,
oh
and it's-
God.
You,
The baby thing was stupid to me.
You could wrap like stem cell / abortion issues into the end if you really want to like really do a lot of heavy lifting on this movie, which I don't think that's necessarily what they're going for.
I don't necessarily think either, but also just the babies is stupid to me, because again, if the whole explanation is it brings your worst thoughts to life, like a baby that's literally just born 1 day old, like has the capability to have like destructive thoughts. Like what?
I think that like the way they explained that away was not away, but the way that he, like, his rationale was more about, we can't let any of these people get a hold of these babies, which, whatever. I don't know. I don't want to.
No, but I was talking about the way it was
stupid.
moving, like in the basket, like it was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you." Or
It was
like, why would that?
What is it?
Why
What
would
is
that even affect them?
It had
in
the
that
eyes
way?
and kind of a shitty CGI smile with its
it looked
cry.
so
Stupid. It just looked stupid, honestly. But
give me your milk. Like, I don't know.
The thing that I was gonna say about the ending, though, wasn't so much that. It was just like, I kind of appreciate that they tried to like keep this couple at the center and make the whole thing about him getting back to her, and then have it be a tragic thing that they didn't. But it just, by the time we get to that point, everything feels so cheap. Everything feels so, I don't know, not by numbers, but like it seemed like that goal had long since been forgotten by the director. And then it's just like, we need an ending. Oh, thank God we set this up. We can go back to this, and that'll give us an ending. Like, that's what it kind of felt like to me. It almost seemed like an afterthought, rather than, you know, make, again, like, whatever, it undercuts whatever chance it has of making any sort of point or having anything interesting to say. The best thing you can say about this movie is that, in terms of like beat for beat action sequences, it's pretty effectively scary and stuff. I like, for example, okay, on the other end of the spectrum here, if I'm going to lean into this being like a ridiculously stupid, silly zombie movie with a fucked up bent, okay, watching the fucking Chinese president, I guess he was Chinese president, get his head exploded by his chief general, that was a pretty satisfying schlock moment for me. That felt like an entirely different fucking movie than even the movie.
I was gonna say that too.
I felt the same way.
That had like the Raimi kind of vibes, where you see somebody's head explode, and it's like
silly. Like
it was silly. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, which that's kind of the problem I had too, where I was like, when they set this up, I was along for that ride. You know, they give me these kind of expectation. I was like, man, this is intense. The guy laughing over the speaker and stuff like that. But then you take it in this like schlocky exploitative vibe. But then you also have moments like that where you're right, it feels like a completely different, it's almost feels like they're going for some sort of comedy aspect, and you're like, what is
which
this
is a
movie
horrifying thing to
doing?
think about in a movie with eye socket rape.
Yeah. That's like, yeah, I'm glad you
Like,
brought that
yeah.
up. Yeah.
There during that sequence, there was like they're watching this happen on the TV, and there are camera angles happening that would be impossible. Like they would never happen on TV like that.
Yeah.
So it just like pulls you out of the whole sequence, and
It
you're
felt
like,
like
what
we-
the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
But then
It's
the
like
dude's
we
head
entered
pops-
Dead Alive for a second. Like,
Yeah. The scanner's like head pop was cool though. At least we got that.
yeah, like
at the end.
Sure,
like
yeah.
taken entirely as a short in and of itself, I really enjoyed that sequence.
Yeah.
But that's
in the
it.
movie,
Like,
because the
yeah.
whole idea is supposed to introduce the idea that there is no hope for society. You know, these people are
Mhm.
holed up in a hospital wing, and they're like, okay, they're really doing their best to keep, you got one cop, you got like one nurse, and people trying their best to keep, you know, society afloat. And then you see the president dying. It's all pandemonium. It did not have that effect at all. Like it's like,
yeah,
it
felt
did
really
not have any kind of stakes like that.
it felt really like this movie just it really oscillates between trying to be grounded in some way and
Yeah.
trying to be like a Sam Raimi film on the other. Like, and it's just like
Mhm.
you're not really bridging that gap. And the idea that and the sexual stuff, like for me, and I feel like just based on knowing you guys, for you guys probably as well, it just really sours any hope of making those ends meet.
Yeah,
It just really doesn't give me any incentive to meet this movie halfway.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another scene that took me out of the movie just a little bit was when there was like 4 kids on the basketball court were like torturing that dude and slamming his ball sack into a pole wrapped in barbed
Yeah.
wire. And our dude like kind of shoos the kids away and actually saves them. And he's like, "Why'd you stop him? I was about to shoot my load or whatever."
Yeah.
It's like, but I thought they don't do it to themselves, you know, which
Yeah.
you know the
That's a good
scientist
point.
says. Who knows if he knows what he's talking about though? But that scene hit me a little strangely.
That's
Yeah, and
true.
that goes back to what you were saying, Justin. We don't really this movie either doesn't follow its own internal logic or doesn't lay out a trustworthy source for it.
Mhm.
Either way, it just kind of feels kind of confusing as an audience member to watch them, like, you know, like you said, there's a full blood orgy, and like the most coherent explanation for that I can figure is that they like inflicting pain on people who aren't pained, but once they're in the act, they like to fucking like feel
Revel
pain
in
too.
it.
Yeah, like feel, they want to feel the pain but when they inflict it, they want to inflict it on somebody. So if you're all hurting, I don't know, man. That's again,
I don't know.
I have no incentive to meet this movie at that level.
Yeah, I agree.
You don't really need to, honestly. You're just along. It's a roller coaster ride, and I really think that's what they were primarily going for here. Have we ever covered a movie, or have you guys ever seen a movie that has a literal blood orgy in it? Like I can't think of another one.
South Park.
Yeah.
Well, shit. All right.
The South Park
I knew it was
Christmas.
like something.
No, Crazy Critters Christmas or whatever.
Oh yeah. I remember that. Well, that was shocking.
But that's the only thing I could think. I was trying to think of examples too. I was like that is a common like extreme horror related refrain joke sort of thing that you would like it's like a joke premise almost. So extreme as to be funny and stupid in the abstract. But then they show it on film, and I don't think there's very many people willing to cross that particular bridge, and for probably pretty good reasons.
Yeah, they went there for it. Yeah, go ahead, just.
Well, I was just gonna say, even that scene, when it happened, that scene feels like very pointless to me, and why I don't give this movie much credit, because at that point, that wasn't the most shocking thing about it, because they're all about it. You know, they're all. It
was honestly a little relieving.
Yeah, it was,
because it was consensual.
So
and then it was Randy.
It was
just as long as it's not actively like fighting against sexual assault.
Yeah,
that is a little bit more comfortable, like by a measure of fraction, but still.
Well, also it didn't do anything. So it literally was like, see, we're gonna show you this, and to me it was like, okay, then it just proves to me that you're just going for shock value, because this offers nothing. It's not even shocking to me by the time they show it.
The only
I
thing
can
that
just say that I
serves,
have seen it, and that's it.
the only thing that serves is to give that little like round incel porn fan security guard guy, whatever his name, like
Oh yeah, the dude with the anime boobs on his phone.
the guy with anime titties on his phone. Like he's absolute, like the older guy is like incel might be a bit of a stretch there, but he's got like men's rights activist vibes. This kid is incel status, and it's like, I don't know, like the only reason that blood orgy, the only thing I can think of that gives that any sort of legitimacy for existing is just as a threat for him to sneak by and then fuck up and get killed. And at that point, it's like he could have done that a million other ways. There's no, like, that character serves no purpose after getting punched. They could have, I don't know, man. It just doesn't seem like there's a whole lot to it.
Can we make a bumper sticker that says "Legitimize your blood orgies"?
No.
Is that all right?
Legitimize them. Come on.
I want a legit blood orgy, please.
I've always been a creeper.
Oh wow.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered a lot of the major beats of this.
Yeah.
I'm down to rate it if you guys are. Anything else you want to touch on? Okay, let's do it. Out of 5, we are going to rate. Come on, get up. Get down with the sadness. Juice. How do you feel?
The thing is it's frustrating because this movie can do some things really well. Like I said, again, I thought the first 20 to 30 minutes of this were a really solid setup. And to be fair, the gore is well done. And I liked that line that they told for a while, where it was between, mostly just very grounded situations. And then they let it go a little over the top, a little bit, and I thought that was great because it looked fantastic. They're using all practical effects. The cinematography is good. They spent just enough time to set up these kind of young lovers to make it feel like you give a shit about people and you're kind of able to put yourself in their shoes. And so that all worked for me. And then there were even moments in between, like the problem moments, that I thought they were still doing good, like when Kat and Molly are trying to get out of the subway and we're getting some good character builds where you're like, oh yeah, she's really trying to help her out. But also this guy comes along, he doesn't know what's going on, and he there's real tension there, and he kind of serves as like, oh well, maybe this guy can really help them, he can stand up against this guy or whatever. So there's real tension there and real like kind of more grounded situations that make sense for the world that they're building. The problems that I have are pretty much all the ones that we've mentioned. The rape stuff, it feels unnecessary, especially because it doesn't lead to anything significant. It really, I feel like, is just included to shock and to say this is something crazy that we have in our movie that sets us apart. It doesn't do anything to serve the film or the story or the characters, in my opinion. I hate the way the character of Molly was introduced and treated as just this tool for depravity. I don't like the inclusion of the president scene. I agree, it just felt like completely out of place and like shifting tonally. The way that the doctor comes off and he's just like this mouthpiece for these like crazy ideas that don't line up with a lot of the scenes, just this blatant inclusion of this blood orgy that does nothing for the film. The babies fucking looking stupid, and also adding that stupid element of like, oh, commentary kind of. So this movie, it really just like lost me in like huge ways, which is a bummer because it had a lot of great potential. But to be fair, it does some things well. And so for that, like you said, we've watched a ton of films, and I was like affected by this movie. It really did, like, gave me some real tension, but also just some like disgusting moments and stuff. So overall, I'm going to give it a 2, and that's going to be for the initial setup of the characters that I found grounded and wanted to follow for a decent portion of this film. The gore that looks good, and for some real tension and real like feelings. But yeah, that's 2. I think is fair enough. Bob, out of 5, what are you gonna give the sadness?
I think we all rate movies sort of in our own way, and I always try and blend like how well I believe the director achieved what he or she was going for, and mix that with like my personal enjoyment of the movie. I think for the most part, except for like a couple little misses, the director really nailed what they were going for. I think they're just trying to make a straight up exploitation movie. There's a couple scenes where they might contradict themselves within the movie, but outside of that, I think they pretty much nailed what they were going for. Jim and Kat's relationship does ground you at the beginning of the movie enough to make you care about them, and then they just have to withstand absolute brutality for the next 90 minutes. And it is definitely a roller coaster in which the screen is blood soaked and the practical effects are like really top notch. There's a few beats of like strange comedy, and I don't really dig the president scene on the TV. It feels like it's totally from another film. But I like that there isn't just a ton of unnecessary nudity in this. And I also, I at the end of the movie, I sort of appreciated that they weren't trying to really drive home some sort of social commentary or giant metaphor. Because the way the movie starts, you're kind of like, oh boy, they might, try and really like drive home a message. And I think if you're going to do that, a movie like an exploitation movie is probably not the best way to go about it. And I'm glad they ended up not doing that, especially because it just seems like everybody's trying to do that these days. So this almost felt like a strange breath of fresh air in that it was really just a straightforward exploitation movie. And I sort of met it on that level. And, you got to be in the mood for something like this. This is not a movie you throw on all the time. It's a heavy watch. And if you're down for just a purely like gore, like just a gore fest, I think they deliver on that. So I'm gonna come in with
blood, ain't you?
going to Subway blood, all the blood.
Wait, what was your score?
I'm coming in with a 3.5 on this.
Oh
wow.
Holy shit.
Way significantly more than I give it credit for.
Randu, how do?
Actually, I don't know that I think that like I'm 97% in agreement with Juice on this one. Like, I think that he kind of nailed a lot of what I would have to say. One thing that I took, that I would disagree with you, Bob, on specifically is the idea that this movie isn't trying to have a greater point, or isn't trying to, I think that this movie aspires to more. I think the fact that they don't show a lot of TNA is testament to that. I think that it's because they want this movie to have something to say about sexuality and violence and the innate monsters inside of us all and all that stuff. I think it wants to be taken seriously on some level, but it just can't pull itself out of the gutter because it keeps fucking squandering its own good stock. I think that, like Justin said, the beginning of this movie sets the stage for something that could be really thoughtful. Like, and I keep thinking of like Train to Busan. I wanted this movie to be more like Train to Busan, but it ended up being way more like Hostel, pointless, violent, and not fun. And not fun at all, especially because of the sexual stuff that they do show, and kind of because of the sexual stuff they don't show. It really kind of shoots itself in the foot from a lot of different angles, and it squanders what it's trying to. I don't think it gets what it wants out of this movie. I think that it's trying to do more than it's succeeding at. So yeah, I'm with Justin. Other than that, I would pretty much agree with everything Justin said, give or take a few small line items, but I'm going to also give it a 2. I do think that this movie was really affecting and effective in its effects. God, that's a lot of effect. No, I think that yeah, it's like even taking out the sexual stuff, it is very good action sequences in this movie. I think they're enjoyable as action sequences. Now the world building around it, everything else, the sexual stuff, like it all sort of dampens my enthusiasm for those things to a point of, like I said, feeling like I'm watching a Hostel movie, which is not at all a kind of movie that I ascribe to as being a fan of. It's just not my fucking jam, man. And I really feel like this movie winds up being the exploitation movie it did not want to be.
Yeah.
So interesting. All right. We're definitely on opposite sides of the coin there. Randy decided to give that a 0.5 for incels, so that's gonna
What?
bump it up.
That is not canonical.
Oh, with Randy's Randy's 2.0 is going to put our aggregate at a 2.5. Let's jump over into our Rotten Mater segments. See what the critics and users think about The Sadness.
Certified fresh to death.
All right, ladies and gents, this is the Rotten Tomatoes segment of our show in which I'm going to give these gentlemen the chance to guess within the best of their abilities what the aggregate user and critic scores are for The Sadness on RottenTomatoes.com. So we're going to start with the critic score, as we usually do. There are only 37 of them, still a pretty fresh movie, but that's not a tiny sample either. So starting with Bob, I'm going to give you the chance, the first bite of the apple here. What percentage of these reviews do you believe are positive?
Oh man, this would have to be like all horror outlets rating this for it to be an overall positive score. I feel like this is like way too abrasive for most critics to be like, yeah, it's great, go watch it, everybody. I'm gonna go with like I want to go low but not too low. I'll go with like a 40, I think.
40. All right. Juice, how are you feeling about this one?
I think I like mostly agree, but there's one thing that I think it's maybe to a fault that's like gonna get it a little bit higher is it's because it's a foreign horror film, and specifically an Asian foreign horror film. And I think critics have a tendency to rate things like that higher than they probably should, just as a kind of default. So I'm gonna take the 50 split.
All right, you're going right down the middle. All right, well, Juice, you're gonna take it, but you were off by 39. It's an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Man, that like foreign aspect really pushes something high.
Shocking. Even more shocking
just
nuts,
than the
just a
film itself.
tertiary scroll of the critics review like blurbs that they have here. No, there's a lot of English critics here, a lot of local critics.
No,
So
yeah, that's what it's
know.
kind of my point, because it's a foreign
film
to
them
people,
because
yeah,
it's okay.
yeah, they excuse.
It's
Okay,
fancy.
yeah, I see what you mean. Okay.
Exactly.
Because
So
you gotta
yeah,
read it.
maybe I haven't read those obviously, but
that's just been my general experience of things. Is it gets a natural boost. That's a crazy boost, but
yeah. We're going over to the audience score. I was so excited to read that to you guys because it is bleak to my mind.
Well, that's a hell yeet for soju.
Kind of. That's a hell yeet for nobody. Audience score. Let's go over to the audience score. There are fewer than 50 audience scores, so it's a pretty tight race over there, actually. We'll start with Juice this time. You can kick us off. What do you think the percentage of positive reviews from the audience side are going to be?
I think it's going to be a lot lower than 89. So I'll probably just stick around my previous score and say 50.
50.
I hope it will reflect more of what we think of this film. So yeah, I'll take our score with a 50.
You'd like to think we're men of the people, but let's find out. Bob?
So.
Man, I'm gonna let that crazy high score from the critics skew me up one, so I'll take a 51.
51. All right. Well, good call, Bob, but you were off by 24 points. 75% positive.
What are people saying about this movie?
Well, that's a great question. There's no critics consensus because the reviews are too low, the number of reviews. But I did read through a couple of them for a second, or I tried to. And here's a couple of standouts. One that I think is it's from Roger Ebert, or rather Brian Tallarico from RogerEbert.com. I guess he works for Roger. I don't know. But
Roger doesn't do that shit anymore.
He had a negative review that reads, "It begins to feel like a series of episodic gross-outs more than anything with rising action or honest tension, and it feels thin on political or social commentary, even though it is clearly trying." And I feel that way.
Yeah,
that I agree with.
I agree.
Now for the positive reviews to try and make sense of this thing. Again from RogerEberts.com, Simon Abrams wrote, "Jabaz's movie isn't exactly deep, but it does effectively channel his free-floating anxieties in both ways both excessive and appropriately nasty. I don't think there's anything about this movie
It's
that's
not
appropriate.
appropriate.
That's a poor
Appropriately
choice in words.
nasty. I don't know what your standards are, my guy.
Yeah.
Do any of the reviews just say this movie fucks?
I think you just
Hi,
did. I'm going to put your blurb on.
Bob.
Hi, Tripper 69. I cut a book.
Here's somebody wrote, there's something commending about a movie that's proudly dystopian. I guess, like, aren't most, like, there's a ton of movies that fit that description. Fucking Hunger Games fits that description.
Yeah.
Those movies are pretty solid.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the foreign aspect is really giving this a lot of kind of saving grace.
I don't know if it's that or not, but whatever it is, man, I like, maybe there's some like critical thing that we all missed, but I don't think so.
Oh, it's
I just
Taiwanese. It's so unique.
I don't know, man. Whatever it is that's causing people to give this movie, more praise. I don't see this movie as being terribly different from like a Serbian film. Like, it makes a little bit more logical sense. It has better action sequences, but
yeah, I would say it like kind of grounds itself better and doesn't try to say as like important things as a Serbian film wants to. But I kind of agree, like it kind of has a similar feel.
I think this.
I don't know. It feels like it's that transgressive with that little return is what I'm feeling. Maybe.
I don't think it's as transgressive as a Serbian film is, and I don't think it's as try hard as the Serbian film is. I like
That's
this
the
way
thing.
more.
A Serbian film is
I'll agree with
super
that. Yeah.
Try hard, yeah.
That's true. That's true.
This
I think
film is
Hostel is
only
the best
half
close
try
hard. Debatable.
Let's debate it.
No, God, we already did. Let's jump into some trivia.
It's totally time for trivia.
It's a new movie, so there's only a few pieces I'll blast through real quick here. This movie was funded with a mixture of cryptocurrency and revenue from a producer's cam girl business, which is interesting.
Boy, this movie's racking up cooters.
Rack them up.
Damn, what a sentence.
The incels for the win. The cartoon the cartoon played at the beginning of the movie was an animated short from 2015 by the film's director, Rob Jabaz.
Dude, that shit was dope. I actually did make a note about that I did mention, where I was like, what is this baller cartoon?
It is pretty sweet.
I remember seeing something, but like I didn't follow up on it. I can't remember what it looked like.
I did make a note. I just didn't mention it. I'm glad you brought that up. Cool. So he directed that cartoon?
Yeah, apparently so.
That's cool. All right.
It's an animated short that he made in 2015.
Nice.
It doesn't say the name of it.
It looked cool.
Check that out. This movie had 99% practical effects. There was, I guess, just a little bit of animation probably to cover up wires and tubes and stuff like that. But pretty much everything was practical.
There's all these wires and tubes.
Wires and
tubes. Superfluous.
The friendly neighbor was played by an actor by the name of Ralph Chu. He's a very recognizable face in Taiwan due to years of being the spokesman for a popular supermarket chain. I bet that was wild. Dude was eating fingers and shit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Shop at Publix.
Don't worry, I'll finger your girlfriend, says Publix.
Damn, I might get slapped with a lawsuit.
Due to
they don't call it Publix for nothing.
Oh shit! Due to the pandemic and government regulations, filming in the subway and hospital was not possible. So the sets were built from scratch in a studio. Those looked really good.
Yeah, they did.
I never clocked that at all.
Me neither.
The film was made upon request from a producer after the news of Hollywood shutting down during the pandemic. So I guess that guy just, saw a need and was like, "We're making a fucking movie."
Great.
I guess. And last I have, the movie was filmed in 28 days. 28 days later, they had a movie. That's all I got.
Okay. Yeah.
All
I would
right.
say like the eye effects. I didn't kind of mention that. That was pretty effective,
Mm.
but also kind of reminded me of like Attack on Titan, the smile.
A lot of I mean,
Yeah.
I think 28 Days Later actually did that. Like,
Yeah.
didn't they?
Mm. I don't
think
remember.
I don't
There's
think
a lot of
so.
zombie or infection films where the eyes are the indicator. You know,
the-
it's not.
The Fulci movie Zombie, it has that very famous eye gouging sequence.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a thing. That's all the trivia I got. I think it's time to talk Cooter of the Week.
Straight chillin'.
Cooter of the week.
Juice, what is a cooter and why do we hunt them?
Oh boys. Cooter is a character type and a straight chillin' exclusive. Cooter must hit 3 of these 5 points to be considered a cooter, and we want the cooter with the most points. 5 points of cooterdom are sexual deviance, manipulation, smug arrogance, overall look and attire, and overall patheticness. This might be the most unfortunate cooter discussion we've ever had. Boys, who is the very obvious cooter of the sadness?
Reply all.
We like to
It's
call
got-
him the businessman.
Umbrella Man, yeah.
I mean,
Umbrella
sure.
Man.
Let's start there.
Okay.
I guess.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's fair. Yeah. Okay, let's start with the businessman. Sexual deviance. Does he clock?
I don't know.
mean, no, not quite.
He only rapes one eye socket. It's not like he did anything real bad.
God.
Jesus. God, I hate that sentence.
I mean, yeah, absolutely.
I hate
He's
to
an
strike that
11
from the record.
He's an 11 out of 10.
Yeah.
Patheticness. Ooh, can we give
Patheticness
him
is
that?
quite
Can we give
high.
him that?
Yeah.
211?
God, I've
It's
been
almost
watching
Jeremiah
you.
Sands level.
Yeah, I've been watching you, and despite the fact that I'm clearly like 15 to 20 years older than you, you want nothing to do with me, even though you
Yeah.
politely told me to fucking fuck off.
But you're mean to me. Why do women get to be mean to me?
All the
Ooh,
cute
no.
ones. Oh, but I don't want to talk
I said
to this.
I complimented you. Why don't you want to blow me now?
It's all these good-looking girls, but I don't want to talk to this chubby girl over here. You know, she's not up to my standards.
Look at me. You think I would fuck her?
Oh God.
Girl,
Uh,
I hope that eye's dilated. You're going to need a couple extra
oh.
millimeters.
Okay.
Millimeters is right.
Millimeters.
Incel, check.
Yeah. Looking at Tyre, I get like he's a zombie, man. He's a zombie.
Yeah, I
It's
guess
fine.
there's nothing specific about his like look. He's looks
Smug
like he's going to
arrogance.
work.
I think we covered
smug
that.
arrogance.
Kind of.
Hell yeah, especially when he starts bitching out. God damn. And then after the fact too. I mean, I think they, you know, hinted that this wasn't necessarily a sadness moment for him. He was like, I haven't felt this hard in years, and you know,
Yeah.
like, all his bullshit that he's
I mean,
from.
that is
the pathetic points
sad.
just keep stacking up.
It is sad.
I think the only thing he doesn't hit very strongly on is looking at Tyre, because there's nothing specific.
Okay, let's expand this because honestly, the movie itself is kind of a cooter to me.
It's like a cooter virus that you catch, honestly.
Kind of.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
I
The
think
Alvin
like-
virus is the cooter of the week.
So I would say, like, let's pick characters to represent some of the points then. So I would say that little security guard guy or whatever,
Oh,
patheticness,
that's
Ultimate
pathetic.
patheticness.
the
Yeah, like I mean,
wazoo.
the face of it
The doctor could be smug arrogance.
Mhm. And manipulation.
And
honestly.
manipulation,
I think he could be both.
Yeah, he's both
Yeah.
of those.
Looking at Tyre, maybe the old lady at the beginning.
The pantsless dude
Yeah,
running around
running down the street.
Sure.
with a Woody.
Yeah,
That's the only thing that I kind of feel like, you know, this movie doesn't really allow for like nobody's dressing crazy because when they go crazy, they're just wearing what they're wearing.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. And then what's the one more point we're missing? Oh,
Yeah,
and sexual
manipulation, smug-
deviance is
Well,
everyone.
Everybody.
Everyone. If you
Yeah.
really want to put it down to somebody, I like I'd give it to Businessman because he's got to hold the title in this fucking race.
Yeah,
I'm a businessman, businessman.
But even
businessman,
taking the
businessman.
the boyfriend at the end and being like, I finally have a goal in life, and it's to cut your yabos off or whatever. I'm like, oh,
Thanks for
Lord.
editing. You know, my childlike ears couldn't handle the reality of that scene.
So yeah,
I honestly think this whole movie is just like fucking full scale cooterdom. By the end, like there's not a single person, unless you want to argue that Kat is unaffected. Otherwise, everybody in this movie is full bore cooter by the end, or victim.
If we want to give each character a different one, we could give the manipulation to the doctor, and we could say smug arrogance could go to like the president because we didn't.
Sure. Yeah.
That works.
Something like that.
Are we down to call the Alvin virus the cooter of the week?
The Alvin.
I'll settle for that. Sure. It's the cooter of the week with many tendrils.
Sure.
Yeah. All right.
It manipulated into a cooter.
Yep. We caught it. We all caught the sadness.
Oh, God, yes. Come with me.
Come with me. We're going to skip over what we've been watching this week and jump right into our hotline screams.
Rob doesn't want to talk about the Bear Winch Project again.
Not yet.
Hotline scream.
If you are listening and would like to call in and leave a voicemail to be featured on next week's show, hit us up at 904-638-3231. We got 2 voicemails this week. First up, we're going to hear from a mystery caller.
All right. Merch idea? Oh, sorry. Let me rephrase that. Hi, boys. Merch idea. Stay with me now. I want bobbleheads that when you, like, bonk on the head, it says a phrase that y'all say. Like, for example, I want one that just says to me, "What up, nerds?" I just want that. Just a nice little fun thing. I hit it in the morning. It wakes me up. God bless. And then for Friday the 13th story, I was a very manic 19-year-old, and so my friend was going to get their nose pierced for a Friday the 13th sale, and I really just was like, yeah, I got to get my nipples pierced, and I was like, yeah, whatever, and I just remember the first one going through my nip, and I just went, ow! And then I said, all right, hurry up and do the other one before I change my mind. I've had them like 5 years, and honestly, the only thing that I recommend if you want them is, especially if you have boobs, you never know how much your boobs weigh. Doesn't matter the cup size, you never know how much they weigh until you get your nipples pierced. I lived in sports bras for like 3 months. Like, they couldn't move. They had to be frozen in place. Like, it was a lot. But yeah, that's my Friday the 13th story. I hope y'all have a good one. Quick book report. I'm on book 56 out of the goal's 100, but clearly I'm going to surpass that. But yeah, I'm on book 56, and currently I'm reading The Fervor by Amakatsu. Amakatsu basically does historical retellings, but makes them freaky. And The Fervor is basically about Japanese internment camps. And I'm pretty sure she's an Asian woman, so it's not like appropriative or gross sounding. So, but it's very good so far. So I hope y'all have a good one. Bye-bye.
Boy, lots to cover there. That's 56, I think she said.
That's
56 books. I am on 2 still.
That is what, like 2 books a week?
I can't even imagine.
I don't know if
I don't
even know if we've reached 25. Like, that would be half the year, and I don't think we've hit that point yet.
No,
that's
not
crazy.
yet.
So 3 books a week? How do you do that?
What phrase do you want your bobblehead to say, Juice?
Dude, my bobblehead, half star for the Yabos, of course.
Yeah, you are committed to that one.
Yeah.
I think it should say half star for the hog, and Randy's should say half star for the incel.
No.
Okay, yeah, there are famous phrases. Yes.
Yeah.
What do you want
knows it.
What do you want your bobblehead to say, Randy?
I don't know. I kind of just wanted to say one of the bumps.
Just upload the bumps.
I've always been a creeper.
That'd be pretty good.
That's what I want.
I thought you wanted it's all about the implication, or like nothing I'd ever smelled before in my life.
I would accept
God,
all.
yes.
Or the
You know,
punch.
Come with me.
Oh God,
There's-
it's really just all the clips from the Bigfoot.
It's just that's the perfect one.
That's the best one.
That's the winner.
We'd sell
That's-
out immediately.
That's a good merch idea. We'll look into
It is.
Yeah, I'm sure sculpting and producing and
Sculpt.
applying voice
Shit.
boxes and so on.
Cheap.
Yeah, easy peasy.
We could get straight chilling nipple rings with like little
Oh,
half
damn.
stars.
Oh, now you're
Perfect.
talking. As long as they're not too heavy.
I will say, when she was saying like, oh, you don't know how much they weigh until until you get your nipples pierced. I was just thinking like, yeah, the nipples, like, because the gravity working
It's a lot of
that way,
movement
it just
there.
seems like, yeah, that would be really tough.
Mhm. My moobs would not take it very well. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Oof, oof.
They're built for comfort, not for speed.
Yeah. Yep. That's what they all say about my tits.
So plump, so right.
Oh shit. But thanks for chiming in there, Mystery Caller. It's always good to hear from
That was
you.
the
We got
old librarian. I thought we established that. At some
oh
point.
Yeah.
yeah. She got a mystery librarian, what have you.
You know, you can input names in Google Voice. Did you know that?
The librarian.
Yeah, I should probably
We haven't
do
done
that.
it, but we should
probably-
probably.
Oh yeah, we probably.
Probably
In the
do
interest
that.
of not being bad at our jobs, we should probably
Yeah.
try it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, we're pretty good at
We
our
got
job.
stuff to do.
Oh
Pretty good.
yeah, we've nailed it. Nailed it all the way. Top to
We're
bottom.
killing it. We're nailing it. We got one more voicemail. We're hearing
See how professional that
from
is?
yeah, amazing. We're hearing from a boy, Brandon. Let's hear what he has to say.
What up, bitches? It's Brandon. I apologize about the noise. I'm driving my work truck right now, but I had to call in ASAP because I figured I would probably forget to call in. So I've made a crazy discovery on the highway today. I was driving and I drove past a vehicle that it told a wonderful story on the back of this truck. So first, there was a sticker that had binoculars, and it said, "On the hunt." I said, "Oh, whatever, he's a hunter. No worries." And then they had another sticker that was a thick girl, and it said, "I like them thick." And I said, "Okay. I mean, that's great. More pushing for the pushing, as they say." So I was like, "Good on you, man." And then there was it's just a Sasquatch, and underneath it said, "I believe." And I have never been more certain in my life that this man wants to fuck a Sasquatch. That is all. Hope you guys have a good week. Peace.
Oh, God, yes, come with me.
Come with me.
Wow. I don't know. I that could have gone a few. I was like, okay, is he a cooter hunter? Oh no. Is he a cooter? Oh no. He might be a Bigfoot hunter cooter.
Yeah, and that could have gone a lot of ways because there's a lot of crazy cars driving around these days with
Oh
lots
yeah.
of messages.
He's trying to smash the Squatch.
Dude, who's
Oh, yeah.
not?
I mean, me?
I doubt it.
Bob, so modest.
Yeah, you're right. It's like nothing I've ever smelled before.
After
Yeah,
that
he's damn
footage
right.
we covered in the documentary, we know that Bigfoot is a female.
Bigfoot
food-
has
foodies.
king size yabos. We know this
Swanging.
for their swinging motion. Reference our Bigfoot monster mystery episode number whatever it is.
It was like
201.
no, I
201.
actually went back. I
Nope.
think it was
Oh.
like 251.
Something like that.
Sweet.
Check that out. Check that
And
out.
also just find that movie. I can't stop advocating for it for the rest of my life. I'm going to.
It's dope.
It's on YouTube. It's amazing. You should definitely watch it ASAP.
You should.
Again,
Thanks,
if you guys are
Brandon.
listening, yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing that story. If you guys are listening, want to call in and leave a voicemail for next week, Hit us up at 904-638-3231. Gentlemen, do you have any prompts you want to throw out for next week?
I like that idea for our bobbleheads. What do you want our bobbleheads to say if you could choose a phrase?
Mm-hmm.
You want the bobbleheads to say?
I'm fine with that. Like,
Bobblehead phrase. All right.
Yeah.
I dig it. Yeah, call in, let us know what you want our bobbleheads to say. And again, if you got any more Friday the 13th stories, it's not too late. Call in and let us know.
It's always Friday the 13th somewhere, folks.
Somewhere. It's like a clock.
It's got a death curse.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. That's going to do it for us this week here at Straight Chilling. We're going to be back next week with a brand new show. As always, we're going to be talking about the 1982 film Basket Case. Slam your eyeballs into it. Get ready for next week's show. Until then, please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. You can follow us on Twitter at STR8_chilling, on Instagram at Straight Chilling Podcast, and send us an email through our website, straightchillingpodcast.com. If you want to join in on our daily Slack channel conversations, hit us up on one of our social media outlets, and I'll send you a link so you can do so. And until next week, as always, all you mother truckers, please keep chilling.